What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 9 fantasy wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. So make sure to tune in if you guys enjoy. Hit that like button, subscribe. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us as the week progresses. Shoot us your questions there as well. And also check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. Sign up for our free newsletter to get access to exclusive content. All those details in the description. But for now, let's get right into it. Before getting into our breakdowns, I want to give you guys a quick word from our sponsors at Overlay Fantasy Sports, who are taking DFS to a whole nother level. And I specifically want to highlight their matchup shop function, which is an absolute blast. In fact, we've been using it since the start of the NFL season because, let's face it, betting on the same old Team A versus Team B can get a little bit stale, a little bit boring. Well, that's not even close to being the case with the matchup shop of Overlay Fantasy, as it allows you to bet on individual player matchups, and it's super simple. Just pick whichever player you think will have the higher fantasy performance. And just like a regular bet would work, check out the spreads, do your research, and then win some money. You can bet on pretty much any single sport that you want, whether it's NFL, golf, MLB, etc. All those options are there. And again, super simple. Pretty much for any single NFL game coming up, you've got a bunch of different matchups that are always updated and added to. So if it's something as simple as just putting a single submission, you can do that. But guess what? If you want to get a parlay going and double up some of those winnings, you can do that as well. So take advantage of this. All of that homework you're doing for your fantasy lineups, let's have that translate to some big time winnings for your wallet as well. So do yourself a favor and check out Overlay Fantasy's matchup shop now. Our first game of the week features the Green Bay Packers at the San Francisco 49ers, and when it comes to wide receivers, let's start with the slam dunk of the bunch, Davante Adams, who's playing like the best wide receiver in the NFL right now. And what's crazy is that even after some missed time, he still has a chance to lead the league in yardage and in touchdowns, which would be bananas, and I expect that pace to continue here versus the 49ers. Honestly, regardless of who lines up opposite of him, he will get at least 10 targets from Aaron Rodgers on a week-to-week basis, and I like that to be the case here. He is a easy top 5 wide receiver on the week. Then for the 49ers, a lot of things to monitor here. First and foremost, no Jimmy Garoppolo, nor no George Kittle, which means it'll probably be Mullins distributing the football here, and Brendan Ayuk, Kendrick Bourne both get bumps up because Deebo Samuel also absent, so the volume should be there in what could end up being a high-scoring affair. And just from pure volume plays, I like both these guys. I have Brendan Ayuk ranked higher, and I think he has the higher ceiling. I see him as a high-end wide receiver 2, whereas Bourne would probably be a low-end wide receiver 2. But either way, I think both these guys are good options, even more so in PPR formats. And as far as our sits, you see for the Packers, MVS and Allen Lazard. Lazard is a speculative one because he might return this week. And if he does, potentially his first game back from injury, which makes me fade him a little bit. But going forward, once he is back fully healthy and has had time to take the rust off, I see him as the wide receiver 2 for the Packers, and based on matchups, we can then talk about starting him. But in the meantime, both these guys sits in this game. Then we've got the Texans at the Jaguars. We will continue to start Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks. Yes, there's a lot of speculation about some trades that potentially might take place, but as of right now, both these guys are still on the Texans. And versus this Jaguars defense, you absolutely want to fire them up. Will Fuller is a low-end wide receiver 1. I would say Brandon Cooks is a mid-level wide receiver 2 on the week. And then for the Jaguars, this is going to be very interesting because no more Gardner Minshew, at least for this week, which means we don't know what to expect from the team offensively. Now, I would say that talent would win out, which means DJ Chark would be my start. The Texans defense not all that imposing, but I would temper my expectations. Low-end wide receiver 2 is what I see in Chark. And then for that main reason, I'm sitting the other names that we've mentioned before when it comes to the Jaguars, Keelan Cole and Laviska Shenault. So do keep that in mind. Then we've got the Giants at Washington. We will start Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton. I think both these guys are in the high-end wide receiver 3 or low-end wide receiver 2 conversation. And then obviously Slayton, in my opinion, has the higher upside, just the ability to stretch the field. This is a tough matchup, though, we should mention, versus Washington, so keep that in mind. Then for Washington, only Terry McLaurin, but he's got a great matchup. You know he will get the targets. I see him as a low-end wide receiver 1. And then for our sits, I'm sitting Golden Tate for the Giants. I think he's the odd man out in this rotation, and unless he's getting touchdowns and limited targets, he's really not worth a play, in my opinion. Following this, we got the Ravens at the Colts. I'm absolutely sitting every single wide receiver here. This is a tough defensive matchup in both situations. Ravens have a good defense. Colts have a good defense. Lamar Jackson has been struggling. Phillip Rivers, this isn't going to be as easy as the Detroit defense. So Marquise Brown, Willie Snead, no thank you. T.Y. Hilton potentially might not even play. Zach Pascal, same situation. I think Marquise Brown, too boom or bust. Willie Snead, too inconsistent. And the Colts wide receivers, other than last week, haven't really been delivering. So I'm fading all parties here. Moving on, we've got the Lions at the Vikings. And for the Lions, this gets a little bit interesting. No Kenny Galladay, obviously, due to the injury. So his name's not on here. He'd be a slam dunk start. So we elevate Marvin Jones. Yes, he's a similar type of boomer bust type of guy, but this is a positive matchup. I anticipate a decent amount of points to be scored here. You could potentially go the route of Marvin Hall, but I think that would be chasing points. If anything, I'd probably take a chance on Danny Amendola, even though we have him as a sit, more so in PPR formats, but that would be a bit of a desperation play. For the Vikings is really the guys you want to target here, Thielen and Justin Jefferson. They should have a really nice bounce back opportunity here versus this Lions defense. I anticipate both these guys to have potentially high-end wide receiver 2 upside, and I see Thielen as the higher upside play in general. Then we've got the Bears at the Titans, and no real differences here. For the Bears, the only fantasy-relevant wide receiver remains Allen Robinson. That will be the case for the remainder of the year, so that's the way you should approach it. He is a high-end wide receiver 2. Then for the Titans, A.J. Brown. Yes, you can make the argument we could list Corey Davis here, but I think this is going to be a situation versus a very stout Bears defense where there's only one fantasy-relevant wide receiver for the Titans. And if I had to put my money's worth on someone, it would be A.J. Brown. And then as far as our sits, obviously that means Anthony Miller and Corey Davis, more so due to the situation here, due to the defenses, due to the game script. Those guys are sits for us. Afterwards, we got the Panthers at the Chiefs. A lot of points could be scored in this one. I really like Robbie Anderson. I really like DJ Moore. Anderson is the preferred choice. He's getting the targets, while DJ Moore, a lot more inconsistent. We'll see what happens here. If Christian McCaffrey does return, it potentially could take away some opportunities from both of these guys. But we know that the Panthers are going to have to throw the ball here a bunch if they want to keep pace with the Chiefs. So I like both these guys as high-end wide receiver 2s on the week. And then for the Chiefs, Tyreek Hill, yes, he's a must-start every single week. But I'll also add in Mecole Hardman because the Panthers defensively, even though if you look at it, it's been their rush defense that struggled. Their secondary, they really struggle against speedy wide receivers, and Mecole Hardman definitely falls in that category. So if you guys need a dart throw, Hardman, not a bad name to consider. Afterwards, Seahawks at the Bills. I absolutely love this game in terms of wide receiver plays. Lockett and Metcalf, we don't really have to say too much in terms of their week-to-week prognosis because they've got the MVP in Russell Wilson throwing the football. Lockett's probably the more inconsistent play, but either way, you start both of them, probably low-end wide receiver 1s. Then for the Bills, man, I love the opportunity for Diggs, Brown, and Beasley here. If there was ever a time to start all three, it would be versus this Seattle Seahawks secondary in a game where Josh Allen, I also believe he will have a bounce-back performance. This will have to be a pass-heavy affair for Buffalo, so I love all these guys. Diggs as a low-end wide receiver 1, Brown and Beasley as mid to high-end wide receiver 2s. Then we've got the Broncos at the Falcons. Jerry Jeudy, I will start. Tim Patrick, if he plays, I will start as well. I think before the injury, this was kind of the pecking order. For that reason, if Patrick is available, I would be sitting KJ Hamler. And if Patrick is out, then potentially put KJ Hamler in that starting rotation. For the Falcons, if Calvin Ridley plays, because he did get nicked up versus the Panthers last week, then obviously you start him. If he doesn't, Julio Jones is elevated even that much more so. But I still wouldn't play Russell Gage because we saw it last week. Even after Calvin Ridley went down, Gage didn't really get all that involved. So to me, it's Jones and Calvin Ridley for the Falcons. Afterwards, Raiders at the Chargers. I really only want to start the Charger wide receivers here. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Allen is a pretty much top 10 wide receiver, you could argue, especially in PPR formats every single week due to the volume he's getting. Thank God for Justin Herbert. Mike Williams, again, a type of boomer bust play similar to a Marvin Jones in my opinion, but I do think the Chargers have a good matchup here, and I expect a good outing from Justin Herbert, so I would take a chance on him. Then for the Raiders, again, we saw it last week. Yes, weather conditions were a factor, so maybe, you keep that in mind, but Nelson Aguilar, Henry Ruggs, there's some other names as well that we could consider. Hunter Renfrow, I think they're just too inconsistent, too many issues, and it's pretty much Waller and Josh Jacobs on this team, so I'm fading the Raider wide receivers. Afterwards, Dolphins at the Cardinals. I'll start Devontae Parker and I'll start Preston Williams. Yes, we didn't really see all that much from the passing attack in Tua last week, but we didn't need to considering how well the defense played. But versus the Cardinals, I think that won't be the case, and we're going to have to see Tua air it out. I like Parker. Preston Williams could potentially be the big beneficiary here because it looked like he was getting the most looks, targets from Tua this last week, so something to keep an eye out for. Then for the Cardinals, obviously DeAndre Hopkins is a top 5 play. I think that will continue here versus the Dolphins, but I would sit Christian Kirk. Yes, he's had a couple of big games these last couple of weeks, but it's been versus some very suspect defenses, and he's still not getting all that many catches. It's been big plays, it's been touchdowns, and I don't see the Dolphins necessarily giving up those big plays and those opportunities to Kirk, so I'm sitting him here. Afterwards, Steelers at the Cowboys. This is interesting for the Steelers because if Deontay Johnson doesn't play, then Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool almost must starts considering the Cowboys defense. Yes, I anticipate this will be a James Conner heavy type of game, but due to the opportunity, I would take a chance on Schuster and Claypool. If Deontay Johnson does play, then I fade Claypool, I put in Deontay Johnson. For the Cowboys, boy, I honestly almost wanted to list every single Cowboys wide receiver as a sit, and if you do so, I don't blame you. I more so have Gallup as a dart throw due to the targets he's been getting, regardless if it's Dalton or DiNucci. But honestly, for the Cowboys, if it's DiNucci under center, God help them, I'm pretty much fading almost every single wide receiver and player offensively. That's why you see Cooper and Lamb as sits. Then we've got the Saints at the Bucks. Is this the time where we finally see Michael Thomas return? If it is, I will start him. Same with Emmanuel Sanders and his return from COVID, IR. Then for the Bucks, again, similar situation. Pretty interesting. What will we see from Chris Godwin? Will he be back, or will that fractured finger take more time to heal? If he is out, obviously you sit him. But if he's back in, then I would do the following swap. I would play Chris Godwin. I would sit Mike Evans. Antonio Brown, this could be, his big return to the NFL. He's eligible to play in this game, and I think you will see the Bucks and Brady get him the football. So that's the main thing to monitor here, the Chris Godwin status. If he sits, then Mike Evans and Antonio Brown, I think, have high-end wide receiver 2 upside. Then finally, Patriots at the Jets. Look, this one isn't ideal for the Patriots. I guess you go with Jacoby Myers because of the volume that he saw without Julian Edelman. It looked like he was the preferred option, and this is a good matchup versus the Jets, even though I believe that this will be a run-heavy affair for the New England Patriots. So to me, Myers is probably more so of a PPR play and probably at best a low-end wide receiver 2, and that might be pushing it. And then for the Jets, Jamison Crowder, he obviously has to return and be available. But if he does, again, a similar volume play, but I would say a mid to high-end wide receiver 2. And for the remainder of your choices here at wide receiver, N'Keal Harry, Damiere Byrd, right now the Patriots just not doing a good job of passing the football. So I'm fading both these guys. And then for the Jets, honestly, we might see Darnold sit this game. Joe Flacco could be back. So Berrios, Mims, I'm fading both those guys here. So with that, we wrap up this Week 9 wide receiver start and sit breakdown. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Did you agree? disagree, along with any other start or sit questions you guys might have. We will do our best to answer them. And if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, and give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us as the week progresses. Shoot us your questions there as well. We'll make sure to answer them. And then finally, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. Sign up for our free newsletter to get access to exclusive content. All the details in the description. But for now, we'll see you guys in future videos.